I can see, so we're going to talk about in a moment here that we all have these energies in us and we all want to balance out both holistic and analytic. And if I look at my introverted feeling, one of the things that I've been working on for the last 10 years, like a decade, is moving from more of a holistic, receptive, open to more of an assertive, directive, focused energy. And I think the Personality Quest is a perfect example of this in, if you listen back to the Personality Hacker podcast, maybe 5 years ago, my statements might be like, if you're interested, you might want to check out and maybe come over, and like all these hedging, phrases, and, only if it's right for you. Just, do what makes sense for you and what feels right for you. It's very open-ended, not very like directive or convicted about it. And now if you listen to my language, I still struggle with that. I still have that kind of framework a lot, but I'm really trying to add in like, hey, and I'm getting more assertive, like, you need to join Personality Quest. They're going to be amazing. You're going to have a great experience. We're on a mission together. We're seeking out a real way of applying personality type in our lives. I'm talking in these terms. I'm bringing more of that assertive energy. And so I'm just reviewing. I'm watching myself try to pull that energy more over to the analytic, because I think it's actually what our team and people in our ecosystem need. Even though it's not naturally in me as much, I can access that and grow and develop it. And I think it's going to serve everybody better. And so I think that gives us this avenue of leaning into the other. I'm trying to give an example of how that might look for somebody.
Yeah.
Regardless of what function you're focused on. I'm just talking about authenticity or introverted feeling right now.
Right.
But it might be a different function for you. But that's how you can start to lean into another part of yourself. And sometimes that can really be a good thing in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think, we've been talking about your ability to pitch as being more like the analytic extroverted intuition or exploration. But I do think I do remember you throttling that energy more if it wasn't right for the individual, right?
Yeah.
And I think now you're going a little bit more like, yeah, it probably would be good for you, right?
Yeah.
Like
I'm asserting things more.
Yeah, a lot more assertive. And I don't think it's the intuition. I think it's the feeling that's becoming more analytic.
Yeah, and I like it. I like developing that part. It feels good. It feels weird at first, but it feels really good to develop that aspect.
Well, I think it's natural to you. I think one of the reasons why, just like I talked about my story, that my introverted thinking or accuracy was the only thing I was allowed to have analytic. But then when I left my religion, I had to go super holistic just to reprogram my mind. And so there's a little bit more of a balance. For you, I think analytic is more natural to you. Like, I think you came out of the hatch more analytic, introverted feeling or authenticity.
But my context.
But the context, like, there was not a lot of room in your family for more than one, and your dad with ISFP preferences got top billing.
Yep.
So you trained yourself into a more holistic version. But I think now that you're entering a more analytic, it's feeling right. Like it's feeling like, yeah, this is what I need to be doing. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think the learning there is that your context, if you're listening or watching right now, your context might have pushed you to the flavor that maybe isn't naturally wired for you. Like maybe you lean more toward one side or the other, but your context kind of forced you or shaped you into a certain way of expressing yourself. And then just know that, oh man, there's a whole nother avenue available to you of growth and access.
Yeah. Alternatively, your context may have encouraged you to be very one-sided.
True.
And the thing you do like, and then the same deal though. There's another side here waiting to balance out if you haven't already done that work.
By the way, we are starting something very new here at Personality Hacker. Now, you might be listening to this years from now, and so it's something that's gone on for a while. But as of the time of this recording, it's fairly new. We're starting up an experience of our podcast live once a week online in a virtual format. So what we're doing is we're gathering a group of like minds to come together once a week to watch this podcast together. And then right afterward, we have a membership program where people can come. It's called a Personality Quest. And we talk about the podcast right afterward. We unpack the learning from it, how we can apply it to our lives. And then we give the entire group of people that have gathered an assignment or a challenge for that week, some journal prompts and some reflection, but also a challenge that week to go test out in their real life, to go explore in the world. All of us are going to do the same challenge that week. And we come back the following week, we talk about it, unpack it, and we get the learning from it. And every week getting together to do this, we've already been doing a few weeks. It's been fantastic. I've loved doing it. It's awesome to see people come and gather live to watch the podcast, talk about it, and go do challenges in their own lives. You should be a part of this. If you're listening or you're watching, we want you to be part of it. Currently, we're doing it on Sundays. You can find out more information to be part of Personality Quest if you come over to personalityhacker.com/quest. and you can learn all about the quests and what we're doing there and get yourself involved, because I think you're going to love this experience, especially if you've loved the podcast and you love personality types and personal growth and the intersection of those two things. It's one of the things that I am super excited about going forward with. So, and there's going to be some live elements to that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've got planned around this. But right now we're just starting with these weekly gatherings, and I'd love for you to be involved.
I will say, just to wrap up introverted feeling and to talk about it as emerged, like when they're balanced, Dario gives an example of like a writer with introverted feeling preferences that they might, like if they're holistic, they have no problem writing a bad character, right? Because they understand it. They understand that there's good and bad in everybody, and there's a lot more nuance around that. Whereas the analytic might really struggle to write a bad character because they want all their characters to conform to the thing that they think is important. And when they do write a bad character, it might be somebody who is like a lesson, right? Like an object lesson, like don't do that thing because see, it'll turn out really bad. So if you're trying to determine which side you have a preference for, is it easy to write those kinds of characters and you have no problem dipping into the dark? Or do you have a kind of a hard time dipping into the dark and only want to do that as an object lesson? But the reason why it's so important to merge these is the wishy-washiness of not really having a handle on one's identity. There's a lot of beauty that comes from seeing all that variety and hearing all the voices and understanding that there's a whole council going on and there's lots of different parts of you that have a lot of different agendas. And being in tuned and tapped into that is heightened self-awareness. It really is. It's an understanding. It's an introspective understanding of the reality of what it means to be a person.
Yeah.
So the holistic version of introverted feeling or authenticity, I think taps into the true authenticity, right? Like the true realness of what it's like to be a person. But it needs that analytic version because it also needs to stand for something. It can't just see all of that and go like the holistic versus analytic introverted thinking, right? Or accuracy we talked about in the previous podcast. If you're too holistic, you just have no motivation for anything. You don't care. Everything is just so absurd. So you have to have expertise in something with introverted thinking. With introverted feeling or authenticity, you have to stand for something, right? You have to allow yourself to take a stand on something, even if it's just for yourself, right? And so you're not wishy-washy. You're not just sort of letting the world happen to you over time. That there's a sense of purpose and direction and a sense of campaign and a sense of crusade. I'm here to do something. But you don't want to be too one-sided on that side either, because now you're rigid, you're locked in. You actually aren't tapped into your emotional experience. Everything is being corralled and funneled toward this crusade. And that one-sidedness can also have real consequences and problems, right? Like you might be actually doing acts of self-betrayal without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So the merging of the two allows an integrity of self and a tapping into the truth and sort of the vulnerability of being a person, right? And all of those emotions that are true and real, including the dark parts of the heart. While the analytic part comes in and goes, but I actually do stand for something. I actually am going to get something done. I actually have purpose here. And I'm not going to let anything really stand in my way. I'm going to keep going towards it. And that merging of the two, you can see FP types in particular who have merged that. They're just these beautiful souls that are doing cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of value in balancing that.